Thank God it's Friday, and because it's Friday, we have the opportunity to do Friday business. Here's what we have prepared for you on Business Incorporated for the next 55 minutes. And in Bahamas, the Afrexim Bank meeting is closing today. A lot has been achieved. The president will tell us during this program. Pope Francis is worried about global debt crisis, and he prefers a solution. Nigeria gets approval, 2.25 billion naira loan from the World Bank. Find out what they want to use it for. Good afternoon, I'm Ini John Mekwa. This is Business Incorporated on Channels Television. We do business starting from the global space. Oil prices eased on Friday as markets evaluated the impact of United States interest rates staying higher for longer than expected. But crude benchmarks headed for their best week in more than 2 months after solid projections for crude and fuel demand. Brent crude futures down 42 cents, that's about 0.5%, $82.33 a barrel, while WTI was also down 51 cents, that's 0.7%, to $78.11 a barrel. However, Brent and the U.S. benchmark gained over 3% this week only, and that's the best since April the 5th. However, the Northern Hemisphere summer demand picture also plays out, providing further support for the market. Russia, on its part, has pledged to meet its output obligations under the OPEC Plus Pact after saying it exceeded its quota in May. However, the price rally this week cooled after the U.S. Federal Reserve held interest rates steady and pushed out the start of rate cuts to as late as December. Still in the global space now, gold prices rose on Friday on track for their first weekly gain in 4 after United States economic data indicated a softening of price pressures, fueling optimism that a rate cut by the Federal Reserve could be forthcoming. Spot gold was up 0.8% at $2,320.90 per ounce, and that has gained about 1.3% so far this week. Safe haven demand driven by geopolitical and economic uncertainty, as well as persistent central bank buying, contributed to that rally in gold. Leaving the commodities market now, we come to Nigeria, where the World Bank has approved 2 significant financial packages aimed at bolstering Nigeria's economic stability and supporting its vulnerable population. In a statement released, the International Finance Institution says that the combined package includes the $1.5 billion reforms for economic stabilization to enable transformation, reset a development policy financing program, and the $750 million accelerating resource mobilization reforms for results program for results, totaling $2.25 billion. At the end of the day, the loans, which aims to support President Bola Tinubu's ongoing effort to reposition Nigeria for sustained and inclusive growth, will also assist the government in its long-term goal of increasing non-oil revenues and securing oil revenues. World Bank's Vice President for Western and Central Africa says that Nigeria's comprehensive macro-fiscal reforms are placing the country on a new path that can stabilize the economy and lift people out of poverty. And then that's Afrexim Bank. The meeting is ongoing. Nigeria is about 5 hours ahead of Bahamas, and so that meeting is ongoing at this time. But the president of Afrexim Bank, Mr. Benedict Oama, has been counting some of the benefits or gains from this meeting, and we have it captured just before the meeting comes to a conclusion.
For us in Nigeria, the question really has always been one of ensuring that we're able to translate what is really excellent potential to reality. And one of the easiest ways of doing that for us, of course, is encouraging the private sector to invest, creating an environment for the private sector to invest. So really, when you look at the global challenges on the one hand, we
realize that the fate of all Africans, irrespective of their geographic location, race, or color, is inextricably linked. In today's world where might is right, the weak can only find strength in unity. The over 2 billion Africans spread around the world must now recognize that together they constitute a powerful economic force that cannot be ignored anymore. They must also recognize that power can only be potent and credible if delivered on a common and cohesive platform. Transactions executed or under processing include a climate adaptation facility that is helping to rebuild schools damaged by severe adverse weather in St. Lucia. A trade finance line of credit to a bank that is expanding access to trade services in St. Kitts. A sports complex rehabilitation in Barbados that we hope will foster the expansion of sports and entertainment collaboration between Africa and the Caribbean. A project preparation facility that will support the emergence of a permanent trade exhibition facility in the Bahamas.
I'm sure at the close of the meeting, which will be, since Nigeria is 5 hours ahead, later on today, we'll get more sound bites from that meeting, that annual meeting by Afreximbank going on in the Bahamas. Now, earlier today, I did have a conversation with the chief economist of African Development Bank Group, the AFDB, Professor Urama. That was Urama. This is Urama. And he did talk about the issue of investing in productive infrastructure, which is a major need in the country. But he also did say that there was no need for the continent, Nigeria included, to continue the borrowing, but to look inwards for domestic funding for this.
But we know that in Africa, we have an investment gap of over $180 billion for physical infrastructure alone. But in our study, we find out that the continent needs over $402.2 billion in additional financing to be able to address these infrastructure gaps in energy, in technology enhancing production, in services, in manufacturing, and other things. But the point I really need to make here is there's always a critical mass of capital that is required to be able to move economies from low production to higher production sectors. And that is why, if you read the report, we've focused a lot on how to mobilize domestic revenue in order to ensure that we have enough resources within the continent to address that, but not by increasing tax rates. It's more about improving efficiency in the tax collection and making sure that those who are supposed to be paying the taxes are paying the taxes, improving tax compliance by enhancing the social contract with citizens, by ensuring that governments actually use those taxes to deliver public services. And that is why in our earlier interview, I talked to you about our public service delivery index to be measuring how countries are delivering on that delivery of public services. Because we see around the world that countries where there's a lot of efficient use of tax resources and also non-tax resources, citizens are able to pay taxes and are happy to mobilize more resources for governments to do more of the infrastructure.
Or was it the challenge of looking inwards to fund infrastructure for more economic activities? Let's take a break now on the program. When we come back, we do have conversations and other stories from the continent here on Business Incorporated. Stay with us. Welcome back. Still watching Business Incorporated right here on Channels Television. Let's head to the markets now to see intraday numbers, different from what you saw in the morning for Business Morning. Anita Edith has those numbers. Hi, Anita. We see we're back to the red. This wasn't the color in the morning. In fact, I was hoping that by close of trade, I'll be seeing 100,000 because the close yesterday was 98,800 plus. So, it was so easy to hope that we'll hit 100 by close of trade.
Well, first, for Thursday, when the market resumed from the Democracy Day or public holiday, it was the market closed the session up by about 0.2%. But it was a gain. And don't forget that the profit takers are always there to take their profit, particularly short-term profit takers. So that's why the market is still, oscillating in between the reds and the greens. Okay, so now for Nigeria's stock markets, that's what we see here, a tad 0.05% in the red, and these numbers, as we speak, are still changing because this is intraday numbers. The market will be closed normally at 2:30 local time here in Nigeria. So the numbers are still moving in between this 99,000 points. And then still, we might see an uptrend or a downtrend, particularly now that the Nigeria's financial market is preparing for the Salah holidays, which begins officially on Monday and maybe by extension into Tuesday. So we might see a reduced trading session next week, just like what we saw for this week. But so far, for the month to date, it's 0.5% in the green and 33.51% in the green year to date. For the South African stock market, it was a green, 0.78%, the last tracking there at intraday numbers. And that's very much in the 76,000, almost at the 77,000 points, which it had lost a couple of months ago. Now, flipping on the other side of the market, we see for Thursday's close, both for the Egyptian Stock Exchange as well as the Kenyan Stock Exchange, both in the green, 1.09% for Kenya's for Egypt's stock exchange at the EGX 30, and for Kenya's stock exchange, the NSE 20, you see 0.14% in the green for Thursday's close, and that's it for those markets there. Now we're still talking about the Nigeria's fixed income market because at some point we will be having the National Bureau of Statistics will be releasing the May inflation report, which should be due out on Sunday, and for next week also we'll be seeing some other market activities. But for a review of the fixed income market, we saw for the bonds market, it was a bearish sentiment. It traded with mixed sentiment, but albeit with a bearish tilt. The average yield there expanded by 1 basis point to 18.6%. And that's because across the benchmark curve, we saw the average yield there increasing slightly at the short end due to sell-off of the March 2025 bond, but remained unchanged at the mid and long segments. But for the Treasury bills market, it was a bullish close for Thursday. Remember, the market is still at intraday, but we do not have that numbers. But this is what we're tracking as a Thursday. The market closed at about. It was bullish. Average yield there contracted by 2 basis points to 21.9%. And it's similar also for the almost segment, that's the open market operations, where average yield there dipped by 8 basis points to 21.8%. So yesterday we've still not been able to get that the outcome of that Treasury bills market primary market auctions, where the CBN was expected to roll over and did roll over about 44.23 billion worth of maturities at the market, and that was the second one. So. But so far, Nigeria's Treasury bills is always oversubscribed, and in the subsequent week, we will be expecting the bond auction for June, which has been shifted to the upper week of Monday, almost close to the end of this month. So we'll be having the Debt Management Office will be conducting a bonds market auction after the Islamic Eid Atta holiday coming in a couple of weeks from now, just about a few days from now. Now, let's move over to the Middle Eastern market, where we see the UAE indexes, both of them are in the red, both the Abu Dhabi and the Dubai FM, 0.21% for the Abu Dhabi and 0.16% for the Dubai FM at intraday. But on the other side of the market, they're closed. Saudi Arabia, they're beginning their festive holiday, which begins on Sunday. They had already declared that, but the market closed on Thursday, 1.31% in the red. That's for the Saudi Stock Exchange, the Tadawul, while the Qatari Stock Exchange was in the green on Thursday, 0.22% at 9,667.00. Now, let's move over to the U.S. stock market, where we see the stock futures there. They fell just coming after the Thursday's record close for the S&P 500, which is still climbing higher above the 5,400 level, which it crossed for the very first time, and still trudging onwards. But at intraday for the futures market, it was about a 0.5% in the red, 0.53%. For the Dow Jones Industrial Average, it was 0.86%, while the Nasdaq just at 0.33%. So the three averages were in the red. The they're poised to end the week higher. But what investors will be looking out for, the investors are looking towards the release of the University of Michigan's Consumer Sentiment Index, which is the preliminary reading for the month of June this month. But that's it for the market. But for a review of Thursday's trading on Wall Street, let's bring in our Washington correspondent, Maria Bird. Our Washington correspondent, Maria Bird. I think we have her there.
Mixed on Thursday, as the Dow Jones was down at 0.17%, the S&P 500 up at 0.2%, and the heavy tech Nasdaq up at 0.3%, mostly due to major tech industries such as Tesla having record-setting days. It is also clear that many investors are not concerned that the Federal Reserve policy meeting ended with stating that there will only be one rate cut in 2024. This is down from what was expected to be 3 rate cuts in 2024. Investors are still hoping that because of cooling of inflation, that the Federal Reserve could come back and change from 1 rate cut to escalating that back to 3. But only time will tell as we see how the inflation does in the next weeks and months ahead.
That was our Washington correspondent, Maria Bird, with the Wall Street markets on Wall Street for Thursday, for Thursday's closing of activities. Now, from there, finally, we move over to Asia, where we see the indexes closing Friday in the mix. We saw first the Bank of Japan. They held their monetary policy meeting yesterday, today to be precise. And when they held that meeting, they retained the cost of borrowing at in between 0% and 0.1% as widely expected. So in reaction, the Nikkei was up 0.24% and still moving in between that 39,000 and 38,000 level. So in terms of the currency, the yen weakened past the 158 level against the dollar following the announcement of that the BOJ's interest rate decision. But the market was in the green. And for the South Korea's Kospi index, which is the market's benchmark index, we saw a 0.13%. As you can see on your board there, 2,758.42 points. That's what it closed, and it's still continuing that gains which it recorded in the previous sessions. And for the Hang Seng index, a 0.94% pullback at 17,941.78. For the other sides of the market, we see a Shanghai as well as the Australian ASX 200 being in mixed territory. So for the rest of the continent, some of them will be on holiday. So far, this is what we have for the markets at the close of Friday and at intraday for some of the markets.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anit. I bet next week is going to be a very shortened week.
A very shortened one for Nigeria.
Around the world. For Nigeria, I think we're going to have just 3 days of trading. And then for Saudi Arabia and all of those...
Maybe quite an extension.
Yeah, it's going
just like what we saw in the previous holiday.
All right, thank you so much, Anit.
Pleasure.
All right, now let's move to Europe where, well, we're talking about the Muslim holiday here. They are talking football. They say football rules over Europe because the match begins today. That's the Euro Cup 2024. And it's starting with Germany. They're the host country, and between Germany and the Scottish team. And the fever there, last tells me, is really, really high. Let's look for some economic factor there, since we're doing a business program. Last, what's the economic factor in all of this tournament and football?
Thanks for having me, Ini. Yes, it sure is an economic factor. The Euro Cup will absolutely dominate every conversation here in Europe for the next 4 weeks. So with an event that big, of course, a lot of money is on the table. But let's just look at some numbers. There's 51 games being played over the next 4 weeks. That's up to 3 a day. And we'll have just around 3 million people watching those games live in the stadiums across the country. And that is with the absolute majority, of course, watching in fan fan zones, in public viewings, in bars, beer gardens, or even at home. And pretty much everywhere people are watching, the UEFA will get a cut. That is, of course, the Swiss-based Union of European Football Associations. They are the organizer of the tournament. And they're expecting an income of around 2.4 billion euros. Now, that is largely from TV and other broadcasting rights, but it also includes sponsorship and marketing deals, throw in some ticket sales and such. Now, UEFA also has some expenses, of course, including 330 million euros in prize monies for the team. And there's also some other cost. All in all, however, the organization expects a net profit of 1.7 billion euros.
I know you're going to be caught up in this fever over the weekend, but let's just find out what investors are doing before you get into that.
Well, let's have a quick look at what happened yesterday first, because we've seen an unexpectedly steep drop in German shares and some other European shares as well. And that was the aftermath of the Fed decision the day before, when the US Central Bank held its interest rate unchanged and said they're only planning one more cut this year, down from 3 cuts investors had been expecting just a few months ago. At first, market reaction was sort of mute. And then we've seen that huge drop. So clearly, we are learning that investors still are focusing on one thing and one thing only, and that is interest rates. Today, there's not too much going on there. The ECB has nothing scheduled. The Fed is done. And the Bank of Japan has left rates untouched this morning. But that's what they're always doing. So I guess today we're looking at some calmer markets again.
All right, Lars, thank you so much, and do have a great and a football-filled weekend. Now let's come to the continent, Africa, where Pope Francis is asking world financial ministers and leading economists to support an international mechanism to alleviate foreign debt, lamenting that a poorly managed globalization has deprived millions of people of a dignified future. The Pope's remarks were delivered during a meeting with the participants in addressing the debt crisis in the Global South conference, which was jointly organized by the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences and Columbia University in New York's Initiative for Policy Dialogue. The conference was attended by some 50 finance ministers, economists, and international development agencies. The Pope further stated that no government can morally demand that its people suffer deprivations incompatible with human dignity. He's calling for a new international finance architecture that breaks the financial debt cycle that's contributed to a current global debt, now estimated at $313 trillion. Now, the National Association of Nigerian Students in South Africa, NANSA, in partnership with the Johannesburg Business School and the South Africa Nigeria Business Chamber, they've hosted the Nigeria-South Africa Youth Business Forum in that city. This forum, themed Reshaping the Future, brought together ambitious youth from both nations to discuss, innovate, and chart the course for a prosperous tomorrow. Our correspondent right there, Innocent Semusa, filed in this report.
In a quest aimed at fostering collaboration and entrepreneurial spirit among young leaders, young people gathered for the Nigeria-South Africa Youth Business Forum. The president of National Associations in South Africa, Abdul Zarek Abubakar, talks us through the vision behind the event.
Nigeria-South Africa, they're the powerhouse of the African economy. So if anything goes wrong between these two people, I think it affects also the other African countries in Africa. So we have to get it right. So we've decided to come together as one nation, one loving Nigeria and South Africa, to rebuild our relationship and solidify it in our own youth contest.
The CEO of South Africa Business Chamber, Diana Games, says the event is truly setting the stage for a brighter future.
I think in terms of the two countries, the other objective we had in setting this up was to bring people together, maybe to meet each other, to chat to each other, to, engagement between the two nationals of the two countries is really important. It's part of our mandate.
Channels Television had the opportunity to speak to entrepreneurs from both nations on the emergence of artificial intelligence and its opportunities to the African continent.
Our institutions are, should I say, decades behind. And the opportunities for people to harness the skills is quite few. And so that's why it's important we're having this kind of forums and conferences.
Nothing great was ever achieved alone. And if you look at the two economic powerhouses on this continent, it's South Africa and Nigeria. And if you look at the burgeoning youth population in both those countries, it's massive. But also if you look at the problems those youth populations are facing, they're similar. So really there's more we have in common than divides us.
But in order to grow, you need to collaborate with people that you share the same knowledge or skill sets, or more importantly, mindset.
Participants here have been involved in workshops, keynote speeches, and panel discussions, all aimed at exploring new business opportunities and fostering partnerships that transcend. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Simosa, Channels Television News.
Now, the Nigeria Customs Service says that it is making plans for seaports in the country to operate a 24-hour service in order to remove barriers hindering export and import trade in Africa's most populous country, Nigeria. According to the Comptroller General of Customs, Mr. Bello Koko, the NCS has committed to work with the Nigeria Ports Authority to ensure that all non-tariff barriers to trade that come with customs procedures are removed. On his part, the managing director of the NPA says that the management of Nigeria Customs has agreed to have its officers work on a shift basis to actualize 24-hour port operations and ensure cargo owners take delivery of their consignment without delays. He explains that the port can eliminate delays and costs associated with non-clearing of cargo on weekends and public holidays by operating round the clock. And then also we have in Kenya that the price of super petrol will increase from next week. And that's according to the Energy Ministry right there, saying that the changes has only affect super petrol. Meanwhile, the price for diesel and other petroleum products would remain the same. Let's take a break now. When we come back, the other side or the home stretch of the program. Welcome back. Still watching Business Incorporated right here on Channels Television. Let's head to the crypto space and see what's going on there. Looking at the board, I see some red. It's a mixture of color. Well, I guess on a typical Friday, you would have more red. So this is not so typical because we see Ethereum is in the green while Bitcoin is in the red. I wonder why. I hope Olumide Additional can help us explain that. But BTC has dropped more than 1% in the last 1 hour, 67,000, just about 67,000. Ethereum, however, gained, we see 0.41%, 3,515. And Solana, XRP, Cardano, their typical Friday trade. Now, let's have Olumide Additional. I know that the shift in the proposed date of interest rate cuts in the United States has affected the market a whole lot. You know, it was supposed to be September. Now it's probably December. So if it's not December, that means in 2024 the United States will not have any interest rate cut, even though Bank of Canada has done it. We've seen the European Central Bank also. They've done it also, but I guess the U.S. would not be pressured into cutting rate. But let's have Olumide Additional now share his thoughts on this. Hi, Olumide. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you. So just looking at the board, you know, one would think that most of the time you see same sentiment for BTC and Ethereum, but it's opposite here. What's going on? We see that BTC dropped while Ethereum is still positive.
Yeah, Ethereum is at the support level right now, primarily because of the optics around ETF's approval. The US SEC administration under Gary Gensler has affirmed that an S1 approval will likely come much later. So that has maintained the holding power. But for the week, it's been a moderated inflow of funds into the crypto market, and primarily because the appetite for risk watered down when the US Fed chief highlighted that they will keep holding rates longer than what the market projected early this year. You recall that anticipation was that the US Fed would cut interest rates at least 3 times. Now it looks like one is just in the works. So that has really moderated the appetite for risk. And we saw Bitcoin breaking um, below the 70,000 support, and it has been ranging ever since between 66 and 68,000. So primarily, what we are seeing from the market price action is that ETFs inflows has also moderated, unlike what we saw in March and April. And so primarily, that's why the market is looking the way it is. But Ethereum definitely has maintained support because of the optics around ETFs approval.
So at this rate, I wonder what's going to happen to BTC, especially because we first moved, I think we moved from April to June, from June to September, now to December, obviously the last month in the year. So if there's any shift now, we're talking about 2025. How do you think this is going to affect price action?
I think ETFs was the game changer in 2024. You recall that Bitcoin hit its all-time high in March 13 when it broke 73,000 resistance. But, election, the war in Israel, the battle between Israel and Hamas also, then the far-right movement in Europe, swing, that has created some form of geopolitical concern. So apart from the United States economy that looks to be showing stellar gains from economic data, you can't see that in other markets. So caution is still being played. But generally, it's been a bull year for Bitcoin. Bitcoin has almost seen triple-digit return. And, going to the other half of the year, I don't think we're going to have that, except we see a President Trump in November, because he seems to be more crypto-friendly than the incumbents. But generally, I think if Bitcoin can break the 70,000 in the next couple of weeks, we should be looking at the 60,000 support level. And if that refuses to hold water, then we might go back to the 55,000.
And that expected boom post-halving is going to happen.
The expected bull rally after the Bitcoin halving, I think it's already in play. But you also need to understand the dynamics in the market right now. The appetite for the US dollar has just recently got amplified. And you know that there's a diverse correlation between appetite for risk and even currency. So as long as the US Fed keeps interest rates at such elevated, there will be little incentives for investors to invest in risk. And that's why you saw Bitcoin really struggling this week, despite the fact it hit 70,000 early last week.
All right. Have you checked the fair greed index recently today?
Yeah, it's been mild, but it's just been mild. But like I said earlier, reiterated that the hawkish narrative of the US Fed led substantial amount of liquidation. For the week, short sellers have lost about $600 million. So that's why you're seeing the market be quiet right now as we speak. So I think except we see exciting buzz in the space, the market might be quiet for a while.
Olumide Adesina, thank you so much for that. And I think, they tell me the market is greedy at this time for fair greed index. I wonder how this will head into the weekend. But thank you so much, Olumide Adesina.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, now let's close the program today with a conversation that I know you'll be interested in. That's electricity supply. In Nigeria, we're always talking about electricity supply. We have joining us the Chief Corporate Services Officer of Ibadan Electricity Distribution Company, Ms. Angela Olarewaju. Good afternoon, Ms. Olarewaju. Good to have you on the program.
Glad to be here.
Great. So, I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of questions to ask you at this time. When we hear of electricity in Nigeria, we're just wondering what's really going on. Why can't we have 24-hour supply? You are the core of it, and thank God you're corporate services, so you should be dealing with us, the customers, especially after you guys have increased rates. We expect to have 24 hours.
Well, it's actually work in progress. The Band A customers that got the increased tariff are actually enjoying good supply. And, what we're doing is to make sure that as many of our customers move up the band, we have from Band A to B to C to D to E. We don't want E to even exist or Band D. We want to move everybody up to enjoy good supply.
At a high cost. It's part of what the labor unions are asking for, a return to the old rate.
Well, you see, the thing is that for a very long time, the tariff has not been cost reflective. We have to go this way.
Is it cost reflective now?
It's not even cost reflective.
Is it service reflective also?
It is service reflective. The Band A customers are enjoying super supply, across all the discos. So definitely for us to get to that point where we'll have that 24-hour power supply, tariff must increase. And then at some point where we've achieved that equilibrium, the tariff can start to come down. That's the plan, actually.
Does anything come down in Nigeria when it comes to prices?
Well, it will. That's the micro plan.
What's the logic? What will make it come down?
Okay, because you see, at some point, when the tariff is increased, the point is that we want, the tariff to be cost reflective, so the discos can actually make money. Because right now, no disco is making money from the tariff by the time you put together all the components. But it's going to get to a time where the discos have cost reflective tariff, and then every other, factor that makes up the tariff is balanced out, and things start to come down. So. And with the foreign exchange and all that, there's a lot of things going on in the mix right now for the electricity sector.
But we don't know how long we'll have to wait before this tariff can come down. Obviously, a long-term wait.
Well, not a long-term wait, because there are lots of things that are happening in the electricity sector right now.
Like what?
Like, for example, we're also looking at the electricity transition, where electricity sector is transiting, especially the discos, to renewables. So we have an alternative, in the pot. So now we're looking at solar, we're looking at wind, we're looking at hydro. Trying not to depend only on fossil fuels. That's traditionally how power is being generated. By the time we have renewables in the mix, it means that we can have more power, so to say, for our customers.
That's interesting, but I'm sure, has any disco started anything?
Oh, lots of discos have. IBDC, we've started. So what we're doing right now, we're already looking at, looking out of the grid. We're looking at independent power producers. We're looking at independent power producers. So for certain communities, we can get power and supply them off the grid. So that's, the way to go.
So do you have timelines? What's the plan? I know you cover Kwara, Kogi, Oyo.
Yes, we cover.
So, Lagos is not included, unfortunately. But what's the plan, really? And how will it change things?
Okay, well, the plan is we don't even have a choice. Our regulators have told us that we have to get going to make sure that we get power. Anyhow, we can get power to service our customers. We have a lot of communities that, we can't service because we don't have enough power. But with this arrangement, what it means is that we can get power from IPPs and supply certain communities, So, the timeline, for example, we at IBDC, we signed up, with about 2 vendors right now. There's about another 3 in the process. So in the next 1 year, even before the end of the year, we're going to see a lot of improvement in that area.
When you say you've signed up vendors, these are individuals who are going to give you like solar panels?
No, these are companies that already have some power. They generate power.
Generate power through what?
They generate power through, gas right now. That's how they get power. And the power they're generating, they don't need all of that power. Do you know, for example? So maybe somebody's generating about 10 megawatts, and actually what they are being able to supply right now is about 2 or 3 or 4 megawatts, and they have that 6 megawatts that we can take off them and use it to supply communities around that area that need power.
So in the next 1 year, we should see
a lot of improvement. All the discos in Nigeria have been given matching orders to start to look at this kind of alternative to supplement the power coming from the GENCOs.
Well, very interesting. And I guess the amended bill, electricity...
Oh, yes, that's also opened up the sector so that the states too can also become players.
Well, but do you have states participating? It's more of a private sector thing.
No, we have states now. For example, that's the plan. That under the states that we cover, we're looking at all the states are looking at.
Do you have any state governments? You cover about 6 or 7 states.
We cover 4 states fully and another 3 partially.
Okay. Do you have any of those state governments working with you on something like that?
Right now, nothing finalized, but we have a lot of state governments in talks with us, and we're collaborating with them.
And I think another issue here is the issue of billing. We have meters. We're talking about meters. We've been talking about it. There's maps that are supposed to accelerate the spread of meters in the country. But how far has that gone?
Well, that's been a very effective scheme for us at IBEDC. And now, even the map scheme has been further made flexible. So customers have a choice to pick from any map vendor they want to get a meter. And in terms of billing, the billing challenge, I think, has already been sort of downplayed now with the metering scheme. What we're doing, we're encouraging our customers to get metered. With the map scheme, you can, pick any vendor you want across our franchise, for example, and get metered. And the process is simple. In 10 days, you are metered. Once you start the process, it's seamless. You get your meter.
It's not that seamless.
It is.
Mr. Larawaji, it's not that seamless in the real world.
No, I tell you, it's that seamless. What's happening is that there's lots of knowledge gap. So we're telling our customers, don't walk through any third party. Right now, for example, if you want to get metered in IBDC, all you need to do is go online, msms.com. Just go in there, you start the process. In 10 days, you get metered, and you can choose whichever vendor you want. The process is seamless since we introduced the map, and even now it's become more flexible, because what used to happen before was that we had a particular map vendor. Map means meter as the providers, designated for a particular location. But now it's flexible, so you can decide that, okay, I'm in Ogun State and I want this map. There's no restriction anymore. So you can try.
That's seamless. Because the last time I tried it, it wasn't seamless. Although that was in Lagos, but it wasn't seamless.
But
that was
I can assure you, for a electricity distribution company, it is seamless. Please try it. It is seamless.
Okay, all right. Then the other thing is, you hear communities having to contribute money to buy transformers, cables. In fact, there was a community that we covered a couple of months ago or so, where they had even bought the transformer, contributed money to buy a transformer, but getting connected, getting officers to come and do that was a problem. And we know that, legally, it's DISCOs that are supposed to give transformers, isn't it?
Yes. DISCOs are supposed to provide all the infrastructure. So that's part of the thing where we're talking about service reflective tariff. Because there's no service reflective tariff, there's a challenge in the system, in the sector. There's no funding. There's a funding gap. So DISCOs don't have the resources to provide everything that is required. And that's why we have a lot of customers intervening. Ideally, that's not what it should be. No customer or community is supposed to buy transformers or buy cables or poles. That's supposed to be supplied by the DISCOs. And what we have in situations like this is when customers have this challenge, before they go ahead to start contributing money or buying these transformers, they're supposed to carry us along. Talk to us officially, write to us and say, okay, look, we have a bad transformer and, we need this infrastructure, so that we work with them. What we've also done to mitigate this challenge is that we have a transformer repair workshop, which I dare say is a first in the whole country. We have a transformer repair workshop because some of these transformers don't need to be replaced. They can be repaired. And that's something we've been doing. We've repaired over 50 transformers since we started that workshop in 2023. And we're looking at replicating it across all the states we serve so that we can do more. So what we ask customers is when they have any infrastructure that is, spoiled or something, they need to carry us along. They talk to us. Because sometimes when they even buy the transformer, they don't buy the correct specifications. There are certain specifications of transformers or infrastructure that should come into the network. Otherwise, the network becomes challenged. When they carry us along, we can now work out a mutually beneficial way, of sort of maybe compensating them. And sometimes these things that they even buy, we have it in the store. But if they don't carry us along and they've gone already to do the purchase, it now becomes, I know that there's situations where really that's what happens. But we're telling customers that please, before you do that, carry us along so that we can also find a way to compensate these customers, and have a mutual agreement, so to speak.
How did they carry you along? Did you write a letter? Do you respond to your letter?
Yes.
Are your emails active? Are your phone?
Very active. And our management right now, the new acting MD, has even set up a WhatsApp group for all the executives and all the key people. So any complaint is not just going through the normal route. It's lodged there. So immediately, 24 hours is being resolved. One of our cardinal, service points is service delivery. We're focused on service delivery. If you don't have enough power, at least you should give great service.
So, at the beginning of this privatization and all of that, there was a talk of customers having the liberty to choose which disco they want to work with. But I don't think we've gotten there yet.
No, we haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, so because I would have just spotted to IBEDC at this
we haven't gotten there yet. But I think that's also part of the things that... But, we need to take baby steps. We need to take baby steps, but we're not there yet.
Okay. So, but I'll count on your word where you said in about a year we should see discos diversify their source of energy.
Definitely.
And that should mean more supply.
Exactly. Yes, that's going to happen.
And then everybody will be on band A by then.
Well, band B, band A.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. Chief Corporate Services Officer with Ibadan Electricity Distribution Company, Ms. Angela Olarewaju. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
All right, now, so, I think Mr. Olarewaju should have stayed with us to the end of the program, but that's where we draw the curtains on this episode of Business Incorporated and also for the week. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Remember, you can always watch this program, Business Incorporated and Business Morning, anytime you want on our YouTube channel. You should do that over this weekend, and then we'll see you on Monday. Do have a great weekend. Bye-bye.